The main purpose of Total Quality Control, or TQC activities, is to upgrade the quality of the company as a whole. In this video series, we would like to introduce 7 new tools which will help you to expand the power of TQC.
Welcome to the final volume of this 3-part series on the 7 new tools for QC. In Volume 2, we used an affinity diagram to select a particular problem faced by group leaders in our sample factory. It was that QC circle activities are more form than content. Then we used a relations diagram to pinpoint major causes of the problem. We picked out 4. 1. There is no basic education in QC circle activities. 2. The group leader lacks leadership. 3. We don't learn the procedures that go with QC. And 4. The boss isn't enthusiastic. What we need now are countermeasures to eliminate those causes. To develop a countermeasure strategy, we can use a tree diagram. These are also sometimes called systematic diagrams or dendrograms. Let's take a look at what tree diagrams are all about. There are 2 basic types of tree diagram. One is the strategy development type, for developing a system of feasible problem-solving strategies. The other is the component development type, which is used to clarify the component elements of the objectives to be improved. Here we'll look at how to create a strategy development type of tree diagram.
First, we have to determine our basic objective and express it in a clear, simple phrase. We've determined that the basic objective is how to activate QC circle activities which at present are more form than content. This should be written, preferably in colour or highlighted, on a fairly large card or self-adhesive label and placed on the left side of a large sheet of paper in the middle. We call this the objective card. In Step 2, it's necessary to identify any constraints there may be on achieving the objective and note them on the diagram. These could be time constraints, something concerned with another plant, and so on. We also have to clarify the objectives at a higher level by regarding our basic objective as in itself a strategy. In short, we have to clarify why it needs to be done and how. In this case, the objective at a higher level is to improve the production plant with everyone's participation. We begin by dividing the basic objective into several points of focus. In other words, the means of achieving the objective. It's important to have a general discussion about this to develop various ideas. Although the major cause we extracted from the relations diagram is useful, the verbal data has to be converted into several levels of strategy. The first level strategies are known as primary means. Prepare between 2 and 6 cards for the primary means and arrange them to the right of the objective card. Now we regard each of our primary means as an objective in itself. Then we write down various strategies for achieving that objective as well. These are the secondary means. As you can see, we are gradually developing a feasible series of strategies which branch out like a tree. The process involves constantly asking what, who, and how, and writing down whatever comes up and discussing it fully. Of course, you can further explore the ideas for strategies by readjusting the layout of cards or rephrasing the expressions. In this way, the diagram is steadily exploded up to the 4th level or even 5th level strategies. Connecting lines can be penciled in to make the relationships clearer. The final level strategies should be verbal data which involve a lot of self-responsibility. They should be realistic targets which are within everyone's ability. Now is the time for careful checking. Run through the diagram from the primary means to the final level means, checking for waste or impossible items. The useful question to keep asking yourself while doing this is this means adequate to meet the objective? Now review the diagram in the opposite direction, from means to objectives. Ask yourself the question, will the objective be met by this means? Add new cards as necessary. Finally, check the layout of all the cards and fix them to the sheet. The connecting lines can now be inked in, and names and notes added as necessary. The tree on the diagram will have branched out into many different means of achieving the objectives. They may all be feasible, but it may be difficult and probably not desirable to put all of them into practice at once. Some evaluation is required to work out an order of priority. For that, we use a matrix diagram, and we'll be seeing how to do that in the next section.
Before that, let's just have a little practice with the tree diagram. Here is one section of the diagram. The primary means here is encourage the boss to be more enthusiastic. Now, please use the following
Now stop and run through the section again as many times as necessary. And here are the correct answers.
Matrix diagrams are two-dimensional arrays of columns and rows whose intersections are examined to clarify the problem and the solutions. In other words, they are used for evaluation of the strategies developed by a tree diagram and for allocating responsibility for their implementation. Let's see how to go about constructing one.
First, we have to clarify our objective and decide on a theme. From the tree diagram, let's select this theme. We'll focus on the countermeasures to upgrade the leader's ability. The means we developed in the fourth level strategies of the tree diagram are allocated to the vertical axis of the matrix diagram. Whether the matrix diagram is effective or not greatly depends on the evaluation categories on the horizontal axis. Careful discussion is required to decide exactly what should be included. In this case, we have 4 categories: practicability, efficacy, challenge level, and general evaluation. Each evaluation category has to be given a specific value. For example, for the category practicability, a double circle indicates an item that is feasible to implement by ourselves and has a value of 10. A single circle indicates an item that is only feasible with help from the boss and has a value of 5. And an X indicates an item we cannot implement ourselves and has a value of 1. The same kind of scores need to be allocated to the efficacy and challenge level categories. To get a general evaluation, we have to totalize the score for each evaluation category. Before we can do that, we need to decide on what evaluation standards to use. For example, we could give A for a score between 26 and 30, B for 21 to 25, C for 16 to 20, and D for 15 and less. There are 2 possible ways to decide on which points to focus on. One way is to focus on an intersection with lots of double circles. The other way is to focus on the highest rank of evaluations, the A's. Now we can select the feasible means by finding those with high evaluation scores. Here are the 3 indicated on the matrix diagram which we've decided to implement. 1. Hold leader study groups once a month. 2. Hold leader discussion groups once a month. 3. Read the monthly QC Circle magazine.
Let's just review what we've achieved so far with the first 4 tools. Using an affinity diagram, we determined the problem. Using a relations diagram, we explored the major cause. Using a tree diagram, we developed solution strategies. And using a matrix diagram, we've made evaluations and determined the most feasible means. And remember that the 7 new tools for QC can be used independently or in combination. Now it's time for a little more practice. Let's take sports as our theme. Please complete the matrix diagram. Various types of sports are listed on the vertical axis, and the 2 categories, practicability and cost, as well as general evaluation, are put on the horizontal axis. The sports are baseball, basketball, skating, skiing, and soccer.
Now stop and run through the section again as many times as necessary. Here are some possible answers. Your answers may be different.
As we mentioned in Volume 1, PDPC stands for Process, Decision, Program Chart. A PDPC consists of a series of steps linked in sequence by arrows. They depict the events and contingencies likely to occur when progressing from a starting point to one or more final outcomes or goals. PDPCs are very useful for planning problem-solving activities when information is incomplete or the situation is rather fluid and hard to forecast. They are used for a variety of themes. For example, developing new products, avoiding accidents, and developing new customers. They are easy to understand and they promote communication and cooperation.
It's rare for a PDPC to remain unaltered right the way through a project. The idea is to update PDPCs constantly, to take account of fresh contingencies and deal with unexpected obstacles as the situation evolves and new facts come to light. But let's now look at the basic rules for constructing a PDPC. An action to be taken is indicated by a rectangular box. Situations brought about by the action are shown by an oval. A diamond is used to indicate a branch point, any point where a decision has to be made, and there must be two routes leading from it, yes and no. A bold oval is used for the start, and a double oval for the goal. Arrows indicate the passage of time and the development of the situation. They don't indicate the length of time. A dotted or broken arrow is used when no time elapses from one stage to the next, or when a response to an action does not affect the plan. In other words, dotted arrows only indicate the sequence. Now we have to select those problem-solving strategies that would be highly effective but appear to be rather impracticable or difficult to implement. We can explore the possibilities using a PDPC. Here we've selected the strategy Learn from a company already using QC circles effectively. Step 2 is to define the existing situation and identify any constraints that will govern how the chosen objective is achieved, such as delivery deadlines, budget, etc. In this case, we determined that our premise was the implementation target is 1 month. And we identified a constraint. Because of budget restrictions, only local companies can be chosen as an objective. After defining the existing situation, it is possible to produce verbal data to determine the starting point. In this case it is, we want to have some exchange with a company whose QC circles are very active. Then the goal can be fixed by imagining improvements on the existing situation. In this case, the goal is exchange meetings are held with a company whose QC circles are very active. The next step is to construct a route which has a good chance of being successful. At this stage, it's important we collect a lot of ideas and think very positively. That's why we call this the optimistic route. The route begins with the two cards you can see here. Then you can gradually build up the optimistic route with cards detailing the other activities which will be necessary to reach the goal. Once the optimistic route is fully mapped out from start to finish, it's important to go back and construct a parallel pessimistic route. In effect, this means identifying places where a detour may be necessary to get round some obstacle. For example, next to the card "Choose several companies," the pessimistic route would involve the possibility that you couldn't find a suitable company in the neighbourhood. That would necessitate the countermeasure of consulting the branch of the association to track one down before you could get back on the optimistic route again. In this way, you can forecast various negative situations and plot the countermeasures required. Connect them all with arrows to make the route clear. It's important to remember that the pessimistic routes must be plotted as detours which always return to the optimistic route. Obviously, to do this, the reasons for every potential problem must be made very clear. At this point, it's necessary to examine all the cards very carefully, travelling along the route both forwards and in reverse. In most cases, you'll find that extra routes need to be added. You may even want to set a new goal. To clarify the theme, the final step is to go through the diagram carefully and write a scenario from start to finish, clearly identifying who, what, and when at each stage. Then you're in a position to put the scenario into action.
It's time again for some practice. Let's take an example from ordinary life this time. Imagine you've made an appointment with a friend to go to a movie. You want to ensure that you arrive at the cinema well in time. Please construct a PDPC by using the following 5 cards to fill in the blanks.
Fit one of these cards marked A, B, C, D, and E into the blanks marked 1 through 5 on the PDPC. Now stop and run through the section again as many times as necessary. And here are the correct answers.
Well, there we are. I hope you made it to the movie on time. In these 3 videos, we've looked in some detail at just how to construct 5 of the 7 new tools for QC. The other 2 are arrow diagrams and matrix data analysis, but they are so multivariate and context-dependent that they deserve a more detailed examination than can be provided here. No single one of the 7 new tools will be the perfect tool for every situation. Each of them has its own particular area of application. It's important to select the right tool for the job at the particular stage of problem solving you've reached. And, of course, it's important to have some numerical data to back up the verbal data. We hope you'll discover for yourself that the 7 new tools for QC can bring you a whole host of unexpected ideas and also stimulate effective teamwork. And they perfectly complement the original 7 QC tools. Most important of all is that you'll find they are very interesting and even fun to work with. I'm sure you'll find that very quickly they'll build up your own enthusiasm toward problem solving. Whatever kind of strategy you're searching for, the 7 new tools for QC are there to help you create order out of chaos.